Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Muscle for Life. I am Mike Matthews. Thank you for joining me today for another installment of my Research Roundup series, where I dissect 3 to 5 studies on body composition, exercise, nutrition, lifestyle, and other such things related to living a fitter and healthier and happier life. And in today's episode, you're going to be learning about how sleeping longer helps make you mentally and physically sharper, how unilateral exercises can benefit athletes and the rest of us, but I'll get into that. You're going to learn about how the 1 meal a day OMAD diet affects body composition, and you're going to learn about walking and how doing more of it can improve your health and longevity. And finally, you're going to learn about betaine and how supplementing with it can boost your athletic performance bigly. Before we get started, research shows that getting enough omega-3 fatty acids in your diet can benefit you in many ways, including reducing the risk of heart disease, increasing muscle growth, increasing cognitive performance, increasing fat loss, decreasing inflammation, improving mood, reducing muscle soreness after exercise, and more. There is a problem though. It's hard to get enough of these vital molecules through diet alone. And that's why fish oil is a popular supplement. It is a safe, easy, and healthy alternative to eating a lot of fatty fish, for example. And that's why I created Triton. It is a high-potency, molecularly distilled fish oil with 2,400 milligrams of EPA and DHA per serving, and those are omega-3 fatty acids that have been specifically linked to a lot of the benefits I just mentioned. And Triton also has vitamin E and lemon oil to prevent oxidation, rancidity, and nasty fish oil burps. Triton is also produced from deep water Peruvian anchovies and sardines caught by fisheries approved by Friend of the Sea. And Triton meets the very stringent purity standards of the European Pharmacopoeia Reference Standards, the Council for Responsible Nutrition, and the Global Organization for EPA and DHA Omega-3. And all that is why I've sold over 100,000 bottles of Triton and why it has over 900 4- and 5-star reviews on Amazon and my website. So if you want to optimize your physical and mental health and performance, and if you want to reduce the risk of disease and dysfunction, you want to try Triton today. Go to buylegion.com/Triton, Triton, and use the coupon code MUSCLE at checkout, and you will save 20% on your first order. And if it is not your first order, you will get double reward points. So that is 10% cash back. And if you don't love Triton, for any reason, just let us know and we will give you a full refund on the spot. No form and no return is even necessary. So you really can't lose. Go to buylegion.com/Triton, use the coupon code MUSCLE at checkout and save 20% or get 10% cash back, and try Triton risk-free and see what you think. Okay, let's start with sleep and how sleeping longer than normal can boost your mental and physical performance. So my source here is a paper called Extended Sleep Maintains Endurance Performance Better Than Normal or Restricted Sleep. And this was published in December of 2019 in Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise. So many people have compared sleep hygiene to saving money, something that is boring and that we all know we should do, but something that has a considerable and compounding positive effect in many areas of our lives, especially as time goes on. And the study that I'm going to share with you here, which was conducted by scientists at Deakin University, that adds more weight to the evidence of just how beneficial good sleep hygiene is. So in this study, 9 endurance athletes completed 3 protocols each: a normal sleep condition, a sleep restriction condition, and a sleep extension condition. Each protocol lasted 4 days, and during each period, the participants completed a cycling time trial every day. Now, before the experiment started, researchers measured what a normal night's sleep was for each person for 4 nights to serve as a baseline. And this worked out to about 7 hours of sleep per night. Now, during the sleep restriction condition, the participants participants slept 30% less than their normal duration, so about 5 hours per night. And then during the sleep extension condition, 30% more than normal, which was about 8.5 hours of sleep per night. So what happened? Well, first, when the participants slept a normal amount, about 7 hours per night, their performance was about the same across all 4 time trials. Second, when the participants slept less than normal, about 5 hours per night, their performance decreased significantly over the 4 time trials, dropping from 57.6 minutes on day 1 to 62 minutes on day 4. And in case you are wondering how that time trial worked, it simply required participants to do a certain amount of work measured in kilojoules. And once they completed the work target, they were done with the time trial. So a shorter time is better than a longer time because it indicates that they were working harder. Anyway, finally, in the sleep extension condition, the participants improved their performance slightly over the 4 time trials. And when the researchers studied the participants' mood and mental alertness, they found that during the normal and sleep-restricted conditions, the participants tended to show signs of fatigue, disturbed mood, and decreased vigor and mental acuity. But in the sleep extension condition, participants were less fatigued. They showed no signs of disturbed mood or decreased vigor and became more vigilant. Now, it's worth highlighting that the normal sleep duration in this study was only 7 hours, which, based on the results, was still insufficient to maximize the benefits of sleep. And therefore, the main takeaway from this study is if you are currently getting by with just, let's say, 6 or 7 hours of sleep per night, which is very common, if you were to bump that up to 8 or 9 hours, it would probably benefit your mental and physical performance and well-being, and it might benefit them rather substantially. And if you can't do that regularly for whatever reason, maybe start with trying to do it strategically, trying to do it maybe the night before a particularly difficult workout, like your big squat day or deadlift day, for example, or maybe before a big exam that you have to take or an important competition, a game, and so forth. All right, now let's talk about unilateral exercises and how they can improve athletic performance more than bilateral exercises. So my source here is a study called Effects of Unilateral versus Bilateral Resistance Training Interventions on Measures of Strength, Jump, Linear, and Change of Direction Speed, a systematic review and meta-analysis. And this was published on July 3rd, 2021 in Biology of Sport. So first, let's define our terms. A unilateral exercise is an exercise that trains one side of your body at a time, and a bilateral exercise is an exercise that trains both sides of your body simultaneously. So, for example, the Bulgarian split squat, that's a unilateral exercise, whereas the barbell back squat, that's a bilateral exercise. Now, unilateral exercises are often touted as more functional and better at improving athleticism by many personal trainers, but is that based on sound science or is that locker room logic? Is that gym lore? Well, that's what researchers at Shanghai University of Sport wanted to find out when they performed a meta-analysis on 14 studies that looked at the effects of unilateral and bilateral exercises on unilateral strength, unilateral jumping height, bilateral jumping height, change of direction ability, and sprint speed. So several measures of athleticism. And there were 2 statistically significant findings, and neither are surprising. Bilateral exercises improved bilateral strength more than unilateral exercises, and then unilateral exercises improved unilateral jumping height more than bilateral exercises. So basically, the participants, they got better at whatever they practiced. Again, not surprising, specificity, right? But the scientists also found that unilateral exercises tended to be better than bilateral exercises for improving unilateral and bilateral jumping, agility, and speed, although not to a statistically significant degree. However, if you play a sport that requires power, agility, and speed, which is basically any sport, it might be smart to include some unilateral training in your program. Because although those findings were not statistically significant, they might still be valid. It would just require more research to determine that. And as even relatively small increases in power, in speed, in agility can make a big difference in many sports, in your ability to play those sports, especially if you are playing them at a high level. And what's more, there are other benefits of including unilateral exercises in your strength training programming. One is they help prevent or correct muscle imbalances. What can happen sometimes with bilateral exercises is the stronger side of your body can start to take over, especially as you get deeper into a set and it gets more and more difficult. Like for me, I'm right-legged and right-handed. I'm just a right dominant person. And if I don't pay attention in my squats, as I get deeper into sets and as I'm getting closer to failure, I will tend to favor my right side. I will tend to shift my weight a little bit more over to the right. And if you do that consistently enough and for long enough, you can start to develop imbalances where the right side becomes stronger, more developed. And the same thing can happen with many other bilateral exercises: the barbell bench press, the barbell overhead press, the barbell row, the barbell biceps curl, and so on. So if you are not currently doing any unilateral exercises and you want to give it a go, a few of my favorites are the Bulgarian split squat, the lunge, and the walking lunge in particular, the step up, the single arm dumbbell overhead and chest press, so 2 variations there, the single arm dumbbell row, and the machine row, where you can train one arm at a time. All right, now let's talk about some more research on the many benefits of walking and why it is just one of the best ways to live longer and stay healthier. And my source here is a paper called Daily Step Count and All-Cause Mortality, a dose-response meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies, published on August 21st, 2021 in Sports Medicine. So for some time now, I have been saying that doing a lot of walking is one of the most underrated forms of exercise. Many people think that it is too easy to make any real difference in their body composition and health, but this study that I'm going to share with you, it shows that walking is indeed one of the best ways, certainly one of the easiest ways, to stave off disease and prolong your life. And in this study, researchers from Semnan University of Medical Sciences analyzed the results of 7 papers involving a total of 28,141 participants, 175,370 person years, and 2,310 deaths. And what they found is that rates of all-cause mortality dropped about 12% for every 1,000 steps that people took per day. And in case you are not familiar with all-cause mortality, that is death from any and all causes. Now, when the scientists compared the people with the highest and lowest daily step counts, they found that walking 16,000 steps per day was associated with a 66% reduction in all-cause mortality compared to walking just 2,700 steps per day. That is massive. That is literally life-altering. That is more than the benefit you would get from quitting smoking, for example, or just losing a bunch of weight. Now, the results were based on observational studies, so they only show that walking is correlated with better health and longer life, but not necessarily the cause or the only cause. But previous research has shown that walking as little as 20 to 30 minutes per day directly boosts cardiovascular fitness and decreases systolic and diastolic blood pressure, resting heart rate, body fat percentage, BMI, total cholesterol, depression, and aches and pains. And so, while the findings in this all-cause mortality study are just a correlation, they do add to the body of evidence that shows that walking is a great way to improve your health, and especially when you combine it with a proper diet and some strength training. So, if you don't already, try to find some time to walk every day. And if you can get outside, out around nature, do that, because it's going to make you feel even better. Those daily walks can help you stay healthy, they can help you stay happy, and they can help you stay alive. Next up, we have some research on betaine and how it can boost athletic performance. So my source here is a paper called Effects of Chronic Betaine Supplementation on Performance in Professional Young Soccer Players During a Competitive Season, a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial. And this was published on October 18th, 2021 in Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. Now, what is betaine? Also pronounced betaine, by the way. It can be pronounced either way if you're wondering. But I first learned betaine and it has stuck. So anyways, it is a sweet substance found in various plants, obtained especially from sugar beets, hence the name. And many people supplement with it, with betaine, to improve their heart and liver function as well as their digestion. And there is research to support those uses. But more and more studies, like the one I'm covering today, which was conducted by scientists at the University of Isfahan, show that betaine is also effective at boosting athletic performance. So in this study, researchers split 29 young professional soccer players into two groups. One group supplemented with 2 grams of betaine per day, and the other group supplemented with a placebo. And both groups took 2 capsules per day, 2 hours before and 1 hour after training, and they ate a standardized diet created by a nutritionist. And in the week leading up to the study, at the midpoint and at the end of this 14-week experiment, the researchers put the participants through 5 days of testing and recorded the following data. So on the first day, bodily proportions and body composition, lower body power and agility. On the second day, bench and leg press 1 rep max. On the third day, sprint and acceleration time. Day 4 was repeated sprint ability, and then day 5 was aerobic capacity, their endurance. And what the results showed is that those who supplemented with betaine improved their lower body power 17.1% versus 5.5% in the placebo group, their bench and their leg press strength 7.7% versus 3.4% and 4.5% versus 1.7% respectively, their 30-meter sprint time negative 5.8% versus plus 0.8%. So the betaine group got faster and the placebo group got a little bit slower. And their peak power during the sprint test also was improved, 19.3% with betaine versus 6.8% with the placebo, as well as endurance, 4.9% versus 1.4%. And so those are some pretty significant improvements, and this study bolsters previous research, which found that betaine improves cycling sprint performance, muscle endurance, jump power, as well as the number of reps you can perform, and that was particularly on the bench press in that paper. And while there isn't enough research yet to put betaine on the varsity team with stuff like caffeine, creatine, and beta-alanine, the more betaine is studied, the more promising it appears. And that, by the way, is why I have included a clinically effective dose, 2.5 grams, of betaine in every serving of my 100% natural pre-workout Pulse. We've been using betaine for years now because several years ago there was less evidence for its efficacy, but we believed that there was enough evidence to stand by it. And we also believed, based on the mechanisms of action and the quality of the evidence that existed, that more studies would indeed support those findings. And we were right. So anyway, if you want to check out Pulse, you can find it over at buylegion.com/pulse, buylegion.com/pulse. Of course, that has more than just betaine, but if you want to get your betaine in along with several other ingredients that have proven to increase strength and endurance and energy and mood, check out Pulse. All right, let's move on now to the final study in today's episode, which is regarding eating 1 meal a day, the OMAD diet, and how, yes, it can help you lose fat, but it also is probably going to eat up more muscle than if you just followed a more traditional style of dieting. And my source here is Differential Effects of 1 Meal Per Day in the Evening on Metabolic Health and Physical Performance in Lean Individuals. And this was published on January 11th, 2022 in Frontiers in Physiology. So OMAD, 1 meal a day. This has been around for a while, but it is experiencing a bit of a resurgence, I guess, because of how popular intermittent fasting is in general these days. And proponents of one meal a day claim that it can help you lose fat quickly, usually even faster than traditional dieting, without losing muscle, without having to deal with extreme hunger or sagging energy and performance. And this study that I'm covering today shows that a little bit of that is true. Yes, you can use it to lose fat quickly, but the rest, So here, researchers from Amsterdam University put 11 healthy adults on 2 different diets for 11 days each. One diet involved eating 3 meals evenly spaced throughout the day, and the other one involved eating 1 meal per day between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Now, both of these diets were designed to help participants maintain their weight. They didn't put the participants in a calorie deficit or surplus, just maintenance calories. But the researchers did not control how much protein, carbs, and fat each participant consumed. So the macros were not controlled. Now, before and after each diet, the scientists measured the participants' body composition, markers of cardiometabolic health, and fitness using a barrage of aerobic and anaerobic strength and power tests. And what the researchers found is that the people following the OMAD diet lost more fat, 0.1 versus 0.7 kilograms, and overall weight, 0.5 with the traditional diet versus 1.4 kilograms in the people following the normal feeding schedule, but they also lost more muscle, 0.3 kilograms with the traditional dieters versus 0.7 kilograms with the OMADers. And also, the OMAD group saw a larger rise in LDL cholesterol, which is the quote-unquote bad cholesterol. At least it's bad if it gets too high. And so in that case, the traditional dieters, they saw an increase of 2.4 millimoles per liter, and with the OMAD group, it was 2.8 millimoles per liter. And finally, physical performance was the same regardless of what feeding schedule people followed. So my comments here are diets that restrict when you can eat are double-edged swords, because on one hand, they do give you a simple, flexible, and reliable method for eating less, simply because if you eat fewer larger meals, or at least I would say some people, maybe not even most people, but many people find that if they eat fewer larger meals, they tend to just eat fewer calories than if they eat more smaller meals. For example, many people find that if they just start skipping breakfast, that can help them lose fat because they don't make up for those calories that they are skipping, at least not all of them, with their bigger lunches and dinners, for example. On the other hand, though, many people find intermittent fasting diets of any kind too uncomfortable because they just get too hungry, or they like eating breakfast and they don't like skipping breakfast. Some people also find it hard to eat enough protein in their feeding window, especially with OMAD. You have one meal to eat all of your daily protein. So for me, that would be 180 to 200 grams of protein in one meal. And then I'm also supposed to eat a bunch of other stuff as well. And I can eat a lot of food, and sometimes I enjoy eating a lot of food, but I would not enjoy that. And research also shows that eating all of your protein in 1 or 2 meals is generally worse for building muscle and retaining muscle if you are cutting than spreading it more evenly throughout the day. And in this study, people's athletic performance wasn't significantly affected by OMAD, but this study only lasted 11 days. And I would wager that the workouts would have started to skid with the OMAD group if the study was longer. And since OMAD did cause muscle loss in this short study, that of course alone would undermine your performance at some point, right? And there is other research that shows that fasting diets do tend to hinder muscle growth over time, which of course tends to hinder performance. Now, the rise that was seen in this study in LDL cholesterol is a bit of an anomaly, since most research shows that fasting reduces LDL cholesterol levels. So it's probably not worth worrying about that unless that finding is replicated in future studies. And so all in all, OMAD certainly can help you lose weight. It can limit your ability to overeat because you can only eat so many calories in one meal, especially if it's a high protein meal that also contains vegetables and whole grains and healthy fat. It is very difficult to go beyond probably 1,500 to 2,000 calories in a meal like that. That is not like, pizza, ice cream, and donuts. That said, OMAD does come with some pretty major disadvantages, and so I would say it is not an ideal way to improve your body composition. A much better approach is to use a meal plan to maintain a calorie deficit, something moderate, maybe even aggressive, but not reckless, maybe something between 15 and 25%. So eating, let's say, anywhere between 75 and 85% of the calories that you burn every day, and eating enough protein, eating it anywhere from 3 to 6 times per day, and eating a few servings of fruit and 4 to 6 servings of vegetables per day, and maybe a serving of whole grains. And just being patient, not trying to rush the process by severely restricting calories or severely restricting your feeding window. Well, I hope you liked this episode. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, subscribe to the show because it makes sure that you don't miss new episodes. And it also helps me because it increases the rankings of the show a little bit, which of course then makes it a little bit more easily found by other people who may like it just as much as you. And if you didn't like something about this episode or about the show in general, or if you have ideas or suggestions or just feedback to share, shoot me an email, mike@muscleforlife.com, muscleforlife.com, and let me know what I could do better, or just what your thoughts are about maybe what you'd like to see me do in the future. I read everything myself. I'm always looking for new ideas and constructive feedback. So thanks again for listening to this episode, and I hope to hear from you soon.